All right. Well, welcome. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Jason?
I can.
Fabulous. So, for the last 2 weeks, we've been working on Dongshan's 5 ranks, which are the 5 ranks of enlightenment according to Master Dongshan, who lived in the 800s in China. And the first 2 ranks have to do with sort of encountering the deepest part of ourselves, encountering oneness, enlightenment, the absolute, and sort of how do we respond to that, right? So the first one, I'm just going to do a very brief summary. The first one is called the apparent within the real, right? So that's like seeing form within the oneness, right? And maybe not even understanding what you're seeing. The second rank is the real within the apparent, right? So that's the emptiness, the absolute within everything. The third one, which is the one we're going to talk about today, is called coming from within the real. And so there's poems that go with each of these. And what I want to do today is I want to take this poem, and then which is, these ranks are typically studied fairly late in someone's Zen training, but I want to actually take this one and like bring it back to the beginner level thinking, because there's a level on which we're always only as good as our basics, and kind of look at, when we talk about coming from within the real, what are we really doing, right? So the real can be understood to be something that, to some extent, it's hard to fully experience because we're in a form, right? So there are people who have experiences. It can be experienced, the connection, the ground of being, the oneness, big mind, enlightenment. These are experiences that people have in the context of their practice and outside of it. But on some level, we're also in bodies, and so we can't fully experience oneness with all that is and walk around in this form, right? And so at the same time, as we progress in our practice, we encounter deeper and deeper states of awareness. We encounter the impermanence of our own emotional states, right? We discover that we don't have any fixed nature. And we then try to relate to these things and express them in a way that is effective in the world, because otherwise you could have a profound enlightenment experience, but then you're just, sitting on a mountaintop, not helping anyone, And that's, at least in this school of Zen, and I don't mean my school, I mean the White Plum School is not the goal. So coming from within the real, the poem that goes with this one is, within nothingness, there is a path leading away from the dusts of the world. Even if you observe the taboo on the present emperor's name, you will surpass that eloquent one of yore who silenced every tongue. So it's like, wow, it's very poetic. Like, what does that even mean? So within nothingness, right? So within the thing that we can't say what it is, right? The Tao Te Ching, the first, page of the Tao Te Ching basically says, if you can talk about it, that's not it, right? So within this formlessness, right, within this formless enlightenment, this traceless enlightenment, there is a path leading away from the dust of the world, right? So the dust of the world is what? Is form, is taxes and assignments and graduate school applications and bills and cushions, and is it too warm? Is it too cold? So within this enlightened self-nature that we all carry within is a path. Now, the taboo on the present emperor's name is that you don't say it. Right? That's a Chinese reference. So remember that this person is writing in Imperial China. And so the taboo literally is you don't say their name. So that's back to, if we can talk about it, that's not it, right? So even if you don't talk about it, so that's interesting, right? Within nothingness, there is a path leading away from the dust of the world, and even if you don't talk about it, you will surpass the eloquent one of yore, right, who silenced every tongue. So even the most eloquent person imaginable, even the wisest, the best podcaster ever, right? The most eloquent one, right? So if you don't say anything, you're going to be more eloquent than the most eloquent person. Well, this is a kind of an interesting formulation. So there is a path. It leads away from the dust of the world. But if you talk about it, it seems like that isn't where you want to go. But if you observe the taboo, even if you don't talk about it, you'll be unbelievably eloquent. So what I love about the third rank is that this is where we ground our insight into everyday life. And talking about it is useless. The reason we don't talk about it is because talk is so ineffective at getting anything accomplished. Now, there's always two sides to anything that I say up here, right? And so you can say, well, but sometimes people have vital dialogues and come to important consensus and create action and change the world, and that's all true. But that's live words, right? That's words arriving out of a vibrant, living, empowered place. That's not what we're talking about here when we talk about talk. When we talk about talk, we're talking about explaining, right? And so where does the kind of talk that Dongshan seems to be cautioning us against come from? Well, it comes from our ego, it comes from our mind, it comes from our reactivity, it comes from our attachments, right? Primarily the attachments, right? I want things to be a certain way. And attachments are subtle because even the very wise can become attached to being very wise. Right? And so Zen is trying to break us free from the prison that we build for ourselves with our own patterns and preferences and with our own identity. I observe sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this too, that people will have a character that they play. They'll kind of come, imagine like you're in a new class or a new job and there's an icebreaker. And you can start to kind of figure out, and like people have personalities, and Zen is not trying to tell you not to have individuality and not to have a personality. The five of us are not, the same person. But what it is saying is don't be attached to a particular version of that, right? I notice when you go to lots of trainings, and because I've been in management a long time, I've been to lots of trainings, they want to give you these tests. And in the test, they tend to sort people into types, and they're not entirely inaccurate. Some people are, more conscientious and quiet and solidly working. Other people want to dominate the conversation and lead and tell everyone what to do. And other people want to use charisma and relationships and build consensus, right? There's different ways of approaching things. But none of those work all the time. And you can see how good it feels to folks when they get their type affirmed. Like when it's time to talk about the thing that they are, and there's, these trainings don't tend to disparage different ways of being. The whole point is for people to learn to work together. So you can see everyone kind of light up. And I always think like, that's wonderful and warning. Because when I start to light up, am I lighting up because I feel connection to the world and am being of benefit? Or am I lighting up because who I think I am is getting affirmed? Because the second one's quite dangerous, because the opposite is, if you don't affirm who I think I am, then I'm going to reject you, or I'm going to quietly or not so quietly start to maneuver around you in ways that are toxic or difficult or shutting you out. So this is attachment, right? Attachment to how I'm perceived, attachment to how I perceive myself, right? Judging myself, judging others. All of these are things that move through our consciousness. And it's okay, right? You're never going to turn into someone who has no aversions, right? The goal of this is to become more human, right? To be aware of your aversions and go, oh, there's aversion, right? The liberation, people hear the word liberation and what they think is destination, right? They think I'm going to arrive at a place where I'm liberated from all these things. No, the things aren't going anywhere. They just no longer have any power over you. That's what's transformative, right? It's the 30-second argument. I think we talked about that the other day, right? It's getting stung by a bee and being like, ow! And that's it, right? Not being like, Why does something always happen to me when I try to go out in the yard and get something done? These damn bees are right now. What's happening? I'm a prisoner of my own dysregulated nervous system, and you don't have to be that. For whatever reason, ancient wise ones of old discovered that there's this way of using our mind where we become more present and more free, right? Because within enlightenment, right, within the nothingness, there is a path. When we go how do we find that path? We find that in our meditation that leads away from the dust of the world. Weirdly, it also leads right into the dust of the world. Right? So it leads away from the dust of the world in the sense that it leads away from us being identified with every little thing, good and bad. Right? But then what's left? Well, I have to care now for every little thing. Right? When I see the bowl on the counter with the cereal in it, just clean it up. Right? When I walk past the cat box and right, just scoop it. That is the dust of the world. But it's also, there's nothing else more important than scoop that. Clean that bowl, make that meal. That becomes supernatural activity if you can just do that thing. Right? And of course, it's funny because I'm reading the poem that says, even if you observe the taboo, right? So it says, don't talk about it. And I'm talking about it for 15 minutes. So how can I teach if I can't talk about it, right? So it's okay to talk about it, but we're not attached, right? We know that we're offending and we offend anyway, right? I know that I'm not observing the taboo, that I'm offending, that I'm talking about the thing that cannot be named, but I do it on purpose, but without attachment, right? That's Tokusan, right? King of the Diamond Sutra, different famous Zen teacher from China, who was a scholar and traveled to the south to eliminate this transmission outside the scriptures. And I think I told this story before too, but he runs into a woman selling rice cakes on the side of the road, and she says, well, in the Diamond Sutra, it says that the mind of the past, present, and future cannot be grasped. With which mind will you eat this rice cake? And he doesn't have an answer. Because his commentaries and sutras and books didn't teach him how to respond. Right? You see a turtle on the side of the road, you don't write an essay about turtles. Right? Pull over, save the turtle. Right? That's how we surpass eloquence. Think about when we feel most alive. Right? That nameless thing. We surpass eloquence when we embody the precepts, when we embody our enlightened nature by how we respond to what's happening right in front of us without attachment. Because if we can do that, right? If we can observe our attachments rising and falling away, if we can observe our thoughts rising and falling away, our preferences, our opinions, our conditioning, right? Our emotions, if we can allow those to arise and express and fall away, we become experts at that. That's what Zen training is, right? It teaches you how to allow the dust of the world to arise and fall away. As you become an adept at doing that, what happens? Well, then you get to live in the world. Because the world is full of suffering. And some of it is optional and self-created, and some of it is not optional. Right? Some of it you have no power to control and occurs whether you like it or not. And so, weirdly, the path away from that is the path right through it. And the thing I want to end with is that when we talk in this manner, we tend to sort of end up in this cliche way of talking, right? The path away is the path towards, to be free from sadness, you must cry, right? You end up in these statements of opposites. But it's not about being witty, right? the reason that happens is because we tend to move toward our attachments, right? Even when we're moving away, we're moving toward an attachment, right? So if I'm attached to feeling good all the time, I'm going to move away from my sadness. But I'm moving toward, drinking or, repressing my feelings or some, I'm going to go towards some version of my attachment. When we stop doing that, then both sides of the polarity appear, because everything exists in relationship to other things. That's the yin yang, right? So everything exists in relationship to other things. So my aversion exists in relationship with my ability to sit with, right? My joy exists in relationship with my grief. If I can't express any grief, I can't feel very much joy. And when we allow ourselves the full range of human emotions, then we gain access to the full range of human emotions. And so my encouragement to all of you is quite simply, there's nothing to attain. Don't try so hard to achieve a particular thing. Do the practice. Right? Sit with, notice, let go, come back. Keep doing that. Watch what happens. That's where the transformation is. And because it's within you already, that's literally it. It's like watering a plant. My job is to provide like a little bit of guidance here and there, because, and that's why I have a teacher too, right? Is because the tendency to identify with things, to attach to things, to leave the road, to go back, to backslide, to have a blind spot is profound and present in all people. And so teachers function as a mirror, right? Just sort of saying, okay, well, let me hold this up for you. What do you think? And see what, and then you do what you do. Because it's non-coercive, right? It's about your experience, self-powered. So, especially in the beginning of practice, right? Just have the faith and determination that you can do it, right? That you are already enlightened and you can awaken to that in a meaningful way, and that can transform your experience of everything. And then when you wash your cereal bowl, you'll have a clean cereal bowl. But you'll also be working directly with what is. Good. I think that's enough.